I'm Melissa, and as it says there, I'm going to be talking this evening about Marion Island. So we're traveling from the lush forests down to the Sub-Antarctic. So I recently returned from Marion. I was a member of the M76 overwintering team, and I'm just going to give you guys a bit of a chat about what we were up to on the island. So a brief introduction. Marion Island is a sub-Antarctic island, roughly over 2,000 kilometers from the coast of South Africa, or a 4-day, very bumpy journey in the SA Agulhas. It's really a feather in South Africa's cap and a great contribution to the South African National Antarctic Program, or SANAP. And researchers have been going down to the island for the past 77 years. So currently M77 are on the island overwintering this year. And so yeah, here's just 2 photos of the island itself. Well, what we called home, which is base, and it's the nice bright leaking pumpkin, as we used to call it. So the island is host to 3 seal species, 2 fur seal species, and then we don't have elephants, but we call them ellies, elephant seals. And I just included a photo of a pup down there in the bottom corner. It's quite surprising to think that something that looks like I almost think a Labrador puppy, turns out to look like a giant boulder and a big blob sometimes at the end of its life, or towards being an adult. And then, as you can imagine, this island is host to a number of bird species. So you've got the magnificent wandering albatrosses down to the smaller Kerguelen petrels, and you've got king penguins, rockhoppers, mackies, and gentoos, 2 species of giant petrels, etc., etc., etc. So it's really bustling and a busy island when it comes to the birds. So fieldwork on the island is wet and wild and windy, but despite the elements, you have to get the job done. And luckily, the more busy periods are during the summer months when it's a little bit more pleasant and a little less snowy. So just some typical fieldwork scenes. In the bottom middle picture is one of the birders, Laurie, and she's knee-deep in a mire. And when you're walking around the island, this is a typical occurrence. You often go swimming in your gumboots. And then also, just to illustrate how cold it can get, these are 2 buckets of water that froze in front of my eyes whilst waiting for gentoo penguins to return from a foraging trip. So yeah, it can get real icy. So as I mentioned, I worked as a birder on the island. So I was working for the Marine Apex Predator Research Unit, or MAPRU, and they're a part of Nelson Mandela University. And myself and my work partner, Maka, who's pictured in the middle there between myself and Laurie, we worked for MAPRU, but we formed part of a larger birding team, which was 5 birders. So 2 birders from the Oceans and Coast Department, and then another birder from Nelson Mandela University. And so our joint goal as birders was to maintain and set up the long-term monitoring colonies on the island. So in order to do this, we would go out to the monitoring colonies and identify incubating nests. So you can see there we've got a bunch of flags. So we'll go and pop a flag next to the nest. We then try and identify the parents of that nest, so both the male and the female, and we identify these individuals based on metal rings or else PVC rings. If the parents don't have a ring, we'll make sure to get them rung so that we can have them in the data set. And then we regularly monitor the success of these nests from incubation through to the hatching, and eventually once the chicks have fledged, excuse me. Just before the chicks fledge, we go around to all the colonies and we ring them. So you can see in that top photo next to us with all the flags, that's myself and Maka ringing an NGP fledgling. And this is really important part of our work as well, is to not only maintain these long-term data sets, but to also ring these chicks so that we can have data sets of known age birds. And by knowing the age of the birds, we can answer a lot of other questions relating to age-related differences, for example. And so overall, these monitoring colonies are really a valuable research input because they give us an idea of trends in breeding success between species, individuals, different colonies, and the changes in these trends across space and time. So what I'd also like to briefly talk about is changes of the research with time. So as you can imagine, with technological advances, we're able to really start looking at different questions that we previously might have not been able to answer. And so we're asking new questions based on this as well. So one of the new developments mainly is the use of, well, it's not too new, but in the recent years, is the use of biologging devices. So when I refer to biologgers, I'm talking about tracking devices such as GPSs, which you can see there's one in the top corner there. That's a GPS in resin that we would have put on a penguin. GLSs, so there's two photos of GLSs in the bottom picture. That's us putting a GLS on a wandering albatross. And sorry for the poor quality, but it's a GoPro video snapshot. Don't really have a hand free to take a photo. And then other devices like accelerometers, temperature depth recorders, and cameras. And so one of the main questions myself and Maka were trying to answer is, where are these birds going? So we deployed GPS devices on a number of species across the island. Deploying these devices is quite tricky because at the moment we're really restricted to working on these birds when they're breeding, because they return to the island, we can identify them on their nests, work with them on the nests, and then also we know where to go look for them when we need to retrieve the GPSs. So here's a wandering albatross with a GPS on its back, and then in the other two photos, that's us deploying on a grey-headed albatross and a king penguin. So in addition to deploying GPSs on the birds, we would then also go and regularly monitor the chick growth of those individuals. So taking measurements and weights almost every 5 days. And so we're trying to produce a holistic picture as best as we can. So not only know where are these birds going, but how are their chicks performing. And then when we were retrieving the GPS devices, we were also taking blood and isotope samples from the adults to get an idea of what they might be eating on these journeys. And so, yeah, it was always really exciting to then return back to base and to plug in the GPSs and see where these birds have gone. So here are just three snapshots of some tracks for northern giant petrels. And it's just incredible to see the journeys that these birds are making in quite a short period of time. So Marion Island is in the bottom, and as you can see, they're going all the way up to the coast of South Africa and back just to go for a foraging trip. And we were seeing similar long distance flights for birds such as white-chinned petrels, great-winged petrels, etc. So yeah, it's just incredible to see the journey they've made and to then think about how I was so seasick on the SA Gullis trying to come home. So what was really exciting for us this year was, or last year I should say, was that we were also able to deploy cameras on 3 albatross species and 3 penguin species. And so now we're also able to answer the question of not only where are these birds going, but trying to also see what are they doing on these trips. And so in the beginning, cameras were these huge things that were put on the birds, and now we're able to work with really small devices. And it's very exciting work. It's obviously changing through time, and there's constantly changes being made. But it's very exciting to be able to start trying to get a better picture of exactly what these birds are doing on their journeys. So I was hoping to show a video. Ooh, Khata, sorry. Let me just go back. Let's see if it's going to work. I might just stop my video quickly, but let's see. Hold on. Sorry. So we'll see. Is it showing?
We can't see it now. I think it's because you are just sharing your PowerPoint presentation.
Oh, okay. Sorry about this, everyone.
Yeah, it's fine.
Technological.
So what you can do is unshare video, or you know, like unshare and then share again.
Try this. Is this working?
Yeah. No, yes.
Cool. So this is a video from a Gentoo penguin, just to show you it's swimming on the seabed. So it does this for quite some time, and it's amazing the dive times these birds do. So you can just see it's carrying on along the seabed. Its head here in the front, and it's obviously checking out for some food. And then it's quite a long video of him at the bottom, but just to give you an idea, he starts his trip up at 1:30 just before, and he will carry on going up for quite some time, passing squid along the way and some smaller fish species until still going up.
Yes. How deep was the penguin?
Unfortunately, because they're quite a small penguin, we couldn't put temperature depth recorders on them as well with the cameras. So we're not too sure as to how deep they're going. But for example, the king penguins go over 120 meters down.
Wow.
So very deep, yeah. So here he is making surface. And if you look briefly, sometimes you might see the coast. So there's the coast was just there in the corner. So yeah, it's just incredible, these birds, or these penguins, I should say, and how deep they're going. And someone has the fun job of now going and working through a couple hours, if not more, per species of video footage to see what's going on. So yeah, I just want to end off with a photo of my favorite part of the island. This is Mixed Pickle Hut on the west coast. And after a long day of field work, it was always really lovely to just sit on the stoep and watch the sun go down with two wandering albatrosses in the foreground. And I just want to emphasize again, this is a real brief overview of what's happening on the island. There's geology and geography people, there are people working on the plants, on the wind, on the insects, you name it, there's research going on. And like I said, there's also 3 other birders who had their own set of questions that they were trying to answer. And so it's really exciting to see the changes over time, and it's a really dynamic environment to work in. So I would say that if you want to know more about Marion, definitely go to the SANAP website, so SANAP. It's a very well maintained website. It's got some great photos and history of the island. And then I think next week there might be a talk by a fellow Marionite, Sean, who will have some amazing photos, much better than my GoPro videos. And he was a seal on the island, so I'm sure he'll give you a bit more info on the seals. So yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you very much, Melissa. That was incredible presentation. Really nice to see that different part, all south. Thank you very much. It was nice. And yeah, next week we are having Sean talking about Marion Islands as well. So if you are interested to know more about the island, you can. And then I'm